Hello everyone, thank you for joining us. We'll get started on today's webinar where we'll be talking all about how to submit a successful Spark application. My name is John Suckling. I'm a portfolio manager here at the Center for Aging and Brain Health Innovation. And today we're going to be talking all about our Spark program, how you can apply, if you should apply, the answer is yes, and kind of what the process looks like for applying. And we're going to give you all the tools that you need to be successful in receiving up to $50,000 to develop your brain health innovation. And we'll talk about the types of projects that are eligible for this particular program. But first things, just to go over some logistics, there's a chat feature that can be used to ask questions while on the webinar. That can be seen on the toolbar just on the top right, usually of the screen. And so you can ask some questions to our marketing communications team who is standing by, and we'll try to leave some time around the end for some questions as well. The webinar will take around 30 minutes or so to get through the content today, and we'll leave some time to answer all of your questions. So to go over the agenda, we're going to talk about ourselves first and foremost, who is the Center for Aging and Brain Health Innovation. Spark program, so why you'd be interested and who can apply. CABHI innovation themes, talk about the types of solutions that we're looking for and the problems that they address. Eligibility criteria, we'll give you some examples of successful projects from the past. And then we're gonna go over the form really quickly that you can fill out to submit. And I should mention now that this is a live form and a live program, and applications are currently being accepted all the way up until June 18th. And so get your applications in before 5 p.m. Eastern time on June 18th to be considered for this program. There's no expression of interest. This is the full application. It's directly to the full application this time. We'll go over all of those logistics and the program dates, and then again, we'll get to some frequently asked questions, some very good questions from our listeners in the audience at the very end. So what is CABHI? What are we all about? So for those of you who aren't familiar with us, we have a mission to accelerate development, validation, commercialization, dissemination, and ultimately driving adoption of products, services, and practices. So these are all different types of solutions that pertain to brain health and aging. And so we are technology agnostic. We don't care whether it's a technology or a solution that's more representative of a workflow change or a best practice. The way that we define innovation is looking for things that aren't currently being used that demonstrate some purposeful differentiation from what the market is currently adopting, and then that yields some benefit and is a new way of looking at things, but ultimately yields benefit for the health system, for the users of the health system, clinicians in the health system, and so we want to support those kinds of innovations. And our vision, we're looking to eventually get to a place where people can age in the setting of their choice, maintaining their cognitive, emotional, physical well-being, as well as their independence for as long as possible. And so the setting of their choice, we talk a little bit about what that means, but it could mean aging at home. It could be empowering older adults to remain living in assisted living for longer, or before moving to long-term care. Or how do we empower people ultimately to live in the most appropriate setting of their choice? And that's really what CABHI is all about. So the Spark program is something that we launched 3 years ago, and this is our third time operating the program. And to talk a little bit about some of the details, it's interesting in that this program is looking to the people that are probably the most qualified to tell us about the difficulties of the health system, but often are not engaged in the way that they should be, and specifically with innovation. And so for Spark, we're looking to the point of care staff. And so these are people who deal with a clinical population every day in their day-to-day work, and understand the very, very specific needs that this sector has in its frontline care. And so taking some of those problems, understanding those problems, unpacking those problems, and then thinking about what types of solutions are we not currently looking at that might be something that we could adopt from another sector. Maybe it's something that we could take from a different part of healthcare. Maybe we could take some solutions from pediatrics and apply them to senior care. And so we're offering 2 point of care staff who can come up with these solutions up to $50,000 to spend over 1 year that can support development as well as validation activities. So generally the way that a project works is they have an idea. It's kind of at that design discovery stage. You know, it's just an idea in their heads. And it's an idea that has been kind of predicated on a lot of understanding the challenges that we deal with in the health system, and then you're applying, you know, somewhat of an innovative approach to solving it. And we support you in doing that by providing the funding, as well as a number of other services that can be available and accessed through CABHI's Innovation Office. And these include things like commercialization support. They include things like getting access to our focus group, our in-house focus group, which is known as the Seniors Advisory Panel, to give you some feedback on your innovation. But just to emphasize that this program lies at the very earliest point in the innovation pipeline, and that we're looking for things that just have to be at the concept stage by now, with some good understanding of the problem and an understanding of the current solutions that we're using to address that problem. So there has to be some kind of context for it, but there doesn't have to be anything built quite yet. Or it could be something that has been built and you're looking to refine it, adapt it to a new group or a new patient population. So those are the parameters for the program, and we'll get into a little bit more detail. And if you're unsure about any of these, you know, stipulations, and if your innovation applies, or if you would be eligible for the program, I'll mention this again, but just email info@cabhi.com and they'll answer all of your eligibility related questions at info@cabhi.com. And so for this program, I've gone over this relatively well so far, but the point of care staff, if you're unsure if you qualify, again, you can email us, but we're looking to the people that have direct interaction in their day-to-day with the clients, with an older adult population. And so these can be healthcare professionals, nurses, physicians, geriatricians, things like that, allied health professionals, PSWs, nursing assistants, or support staff, dietary aides, housekeepers, home care aides as well. And so anyone that's engaging in some sort of a fashion with this population and sees those challenges, that's really what we're looking for. And we also allow, just as a point of clarification, because we get asked this a lot, yes, you can apply if you're a clinical care manager, if you directly oversee a unit or a group of clinicians that is dealing with a patient population, you can apply as the lead applicant, and just stating that that is your kind of direct line of interaction with the patient population is through your staff. And so that's a question we get asked a lot. So these are our 4 priority themes, and so we refresh these every year based on the needs of the health system. And so if you're thinking, you know, should I apply? Is my innovation in some way eligible for this program? Think about these 4 themes and how your solution pertains to one of them, or even better, some of them or all of them. And they're not exactly mutually exclusive. There's some overlap, but just to give some context, we're looking for solutions that allow older adults to maximize their independence as they age and continue to live, as I mentioned, in the most appropriate setting, whatever that might be. We're looking for tools and solutions that empower caregivers, both formal and informal, to keep providing excellent care and to support them educationally. What are some of the things that people who don't know, you know, about dementia, and then all of a sudden they're caring for someone who has dementia or related disease? How do we empower those people to understand the challenges that are facing them, or how do we make it an easier kind of workflow, or improve the standard of care in a formal setting? So that would be also an appropriate use of funds as a solution that speaks to that challenge. Care coordination and navigation. It's difficult to navigate the health system. It's even more difficult when dealing with things like cognitive impairment or elderly individuals that are not often engaged in that you know, care planning and care decision process. And so how do we empower older adults to be a part of their care, and how do we make that more clear and systematic, and how do we help them navigate the different resources that are available within the health system? And then finally, cognitive health, and this is also kind of a tie-in for all of our themes. We specifically focus on the cognitive impairment, or the pre-cognitive impairment, or the dementia-related you know, cognitive disorders. And so this category looks specifically for solutions that can either identify or help improve one's cognitive health as it pertains to dementia. So these are the 4 themes. We look for a relatively direct tie-in to each of these. And one thing to keep in mind is that cognitive health theme kind of prevails across all 4 of these themes, and that we're looking for solutions that help with aging in place, caregiver support, care coordination, and navigation, all with kind of a framing of dementia and cognitive health. So after you submit your proposal and your application, you will be assessed first just on eligibility, and that happens all in-house. And this just gives you a sense of what those different criterion are from our perspective. You have to identify a theme and talk about how you are relevant to the theme that we just talked about in the previous slide. There's an IP arrangement that has to be that the host organization owns the IP or is substantially contributing to the IP of an existing innovative solution. So you can use something that's an off-the-shelf technology like a VR headset, but you must be applying the VR headset to your clinical care in a way that it's not just taking something, dragging and dropping it into a clinical setting. You're building a workflow around it. How do we use VR in a clinical setting? And that's actually an example of a project we've had in the past. So just to emphasize that there has to be some benefit from the commercialization or dissemination of the solution for the host institution. So if you're using off-the-shelf technologies, then these are some of the rules around using those. Again, I mentioned this a little bit. Innovative is defined as deviating from standard practice or common procedure and purposefully differentiating from existing solutions. So you're not reinventing the wheel. If you're building a caregiver support app that allows them to access resources, that is innovative and that people aren't using it, but there's other services that are similar to that. So why is yours different? Why is this a purposeful differentiation? What critical need in the system or for users is that solving, and what are the unique elements of your solution that you're putting forward? So make sure to emphasize that in the application, and make sure that these 3 different criteria are referenced in your application to ensure that you are eligible and can move through to the review. So those are some of the application or eligibility criteria for the solution. Now specifically about who can apply, we're looking for someone who's a point of care, directly working with older adults. The host organization will receive the funding, and so that organization must be, and this is your employer if you're the applicant, a non-for-profit healthcare organization in Canada, or a non-profit organization with a mandate to serve the needs of older adults, people with dementia. So that includes a large grouping of people from academia, if that is part of your department and your research department's mandate. And as well as a member of the SQLI, which is a consortium of senior care providers across Canada and the United States. And if you're not sure if you're a part of that, then you could probably ask someone at the director level within your organization. It's a fairly small list, so chances are if you don't know, you're probably not on it. But if you want to check in with us, if your organization is a part of that, if you don't meet these first criteria, then feel free to do so just by emailing info@cabhi.com. And the project eligibility criteria, to give a sense of the types of projects, that we're interested in funding and what those are meant to accomplish. It can't involve basic research or primarily academic goals. And so what we mean by that is it's not a program for fundamental research or exploring the appropriacy of a new solution. It's about really engaging your older adult population and bringing new solutions to that population. And so that doesn't have to be a incredibly revolutionary technology. We're not looking for the next iPhone or the next crazy invasive technology, and actually quite the opposite. We're looking for things that are a little bit more drag and drop. Well, how can we bring something that's being used in a different line of care into senior care, and how can we use it more effectively? So nothing to do with capital investment in portfolios or pharmaceutical clinical trials. We don't do that stuff. Eligible products or projects must focus on the development or refinement of a pre-commercial device, software, practice, or service, and projects cannot exceed 12 months. So again, it's a 12-month project up to $50,000, and it can be less than that, and it can be less money than that, but that's generally the framing of our successful projects in the Spark program. So once you get past that rigorous eligibility screen, it will be passed along to a panel of external reviewers who will be applying these 5 criteria to determine which projects are suitable and best for funding. And to go over them each quickly, strategic alignment looks to how well does it relate to one of the themes that we mentioned. So how well does it pertain to cognitive health, aging at home, caregiver support, or care coordination and navigation? And we give you an opportunity to make that case in the application form. And so that would be the place where that would happen. Quality of the solution. So even though this is innovative, chances are you can tie this back to some sort of evidence base. Why do we think this is a good idea? Why do we think that bringing, as we can see on the right side, of virtual reality, why is bringing virtual reality into a care setting a good idea, and convince people of why this is an important step and an innovative step? And so looking at things like that under the second category. Third is market opportunity and commercial merit. So it doesn't necessarily have to be following a commercialization pathway necessarily, but we're looking for solutions that can scale. And so in this section, you'll be talking about why there's a big market opportunity, why other organizations are likely facing the same challenges, and why, if this is a successful project, you'll have an easy time getting adopted by other places. And it's not just about having local benefit and introducing this into your immediate local context at your host institution, although that can be the scope of the project. We're looking for things that, a year from now, can be scaled into different organizations and make an impact more broadly across the Canadian health system or even worldwide. Project goals, so looking at how this specific project would help you achieve the next step, whatever the next step is. If you're using this to build a minimum viable product, then that makes sense. If you're using this to validate and get end user feedback on your solution, then talk about why that's important to get to your next step. So just speaking to why it's important that you receive the funding and how it allows you to achieve something that you otherwise wouldn't be able to. And company and team experience, just, you'll provide the resumes and any of the experience that you have on your team. One of the things to really emphasize is the teams that apply as teams and not as individuals are often most successful because they have the most rounded out skill set. They've engaged other people on their care team. Innovation problems a lot of the times pertain to buy-in and getting the right people on board. And so one of the ways that you can prove that that's not going to be a problem to our evaluators is by showing that you've got your unit on board, or multiple people from your unit or across different units, even better, on board with this project, and then that they have some breadth and knowledge of the area that we're working within. So now we're just going to give a couple examples of projects that we've funded in the past. And so this one example is a Spark project from our first round. It's called Jerry MedRisk. And so the problem that they identified was that clinicians didn't have a trusted source of access, nor a timely source of access to information around geriatric pharmacology. And so polypharmacy, or the use of 5 or more drugs, is a big issue, and a lot of prescriptions have been accumulating for certain patients. And how do we make sure that we're offering the optimal mix of drugs and the right prescriptions, and that we're not they're not using too many drugs and they're not interacting with each other, and that knowledge isn't easy to access. And so what this team did, based out of Schlegel in Waterloo, is they put together a service that used telemedicine, so an existing technology, telemedicine, to connect clinicians, for people with clinicians that care for an older adult population, to connect with pharmacists and to connect with geriatricians that would have this information and can serve as an easy point of access for that information when caring for an older adult population. And so for within an Ontario context, it's generally about a 3-week wait time that you would have to submit a requisition and say, I require this information. How can I get access to a pharmacist who can give information to my client about their current medication mix? And this, using telemedicine or an online virtual portal where they can ask questions directly, shortens that time to about 3 or 4 days. And so that's a really quick turnaround, relative to the context. And so using existing technology to make that a faster process, putting the older adult in a position where they can understand the medication mix that they're on, and helping the clinician to obtain that knowledge on how to care for them in the most optimal way as it pertains to medication. So that's one example of a very successful project that we've had. And another one, and I keep mentioning VR, and this is why, is we had a project that was using virtual reality and looking at its impact on a couple of things. First, wandering behaviors, so exit-seeking behaviors. A lot of the times, one of the problems that's articulated in long-term care is that people who live in long-term care aren't given the same access to the outside world, and that's what leads them to start to want to wander and seek the outside world. And so virtual reality was considered maybe a tool that we could help to simulate those environments. And so the team working out of UHN, and you can see Dr. Laura Appel just on the right side, who's the primary investigator for this project, brought this innovation and brought this virtual reality therapy to a group of about 50 different older adults, and validated that it was a technology that would be accepted by that population, and that it was it was more of a feasibility study to show that yes, we can use VR, and it put some some research rigor and framing into that question. And they've gone on now to be approved for a larger study through one of our other programs, where they're going to be looking at things like impact on mood and more frequent exposure to VR therapy. And so that's a really cool project, again, using an off-the-shelf technology. The VR headset that they're using is about 50 to 60 bucks. Smartphone's a little more expensive than that, but you get the idea. So you don't have to build the VR, but think about ways that we can use technology to solve some of the common problems that we have. And one of the big implications for this particular project is that it could, if proven effective, reduce the need for prescriptions and drug therapies if it shows that using these simulations and VR experiences has a similar impact and effect to drug therapies or other types of treatments. And so that could be, that could have major implications. So we'll talk about the logistics of applying. So I'll show you, you visit our website, CABHI.com, and you'll see a couple of different headers about different programs sometimes, but I think Spark is the only live program right now. In fact, I'm certain that it is. And so this will come up and you'll load our homepage, and you can click on Apply for Spark, and that will bring you to the information package. And so this page right here, and you can take note of the URL, is everything you would need to know, and probably some things that you don't even need to know about our Spark program. And so it's everything, links to our past webinars if you're not sick of me yet. You can read up on the selection criteria. Pretty much everything I've gone over and more can be found on this page. And you'll also find at the very bottom a link to our application page. And so you can, once you feel like you have a good grasp on the content in our information package, come to our Spark application. And you can walk through this. You can save your form and share it, which I'll show you how to do in just a minute. But you're going to go down this form page. One thing to note is there's 36 questions in the form, but your first name is one question, your last name is the second question, so it's really not as bad as it seems. And if you have any questions, there's a link to email Christina, who's overseeing the program application page, and so you can send over your questions to Christina. But again, so read through the program information package and then submit an application no later than 5 p.m. June 14th in 2018. So CABHI's online submission form, we're looking for you to go to this form and fill it out before the deadline, but there's a number of different steps that you can take to share it. It can be a collaborative project proposal. You can save it through the link, and I'll show you quickly how to do that. If you go to the website and just go back to the form that we were on now. And so a lot of the times, as I mentioned, this is a team that's applying, or a group of clinical managers that oversee a couple of different units. You're going to want to select one primary applicant. But if I put in my own name here, and then I can put in my last name, and then if I wanted to save the progress of this form, then it would create a unique URL at the top, which I can then copy and paste and send in an email. Try to avoid working on it at the same time. And if there's any difficulties, technically, a lot of the times the forms save by themselves, and we can retrieve it from the back end on Blitzen. So if you have any problems with that, just let us know. Email Christina. And so these are the important deadlines. And I think I might have said a different date at the beginning, but so June 14th is the deadline for the full application. So not to get that confused. So successful applicants will be notified about a month later, and the agreements will be signed in August, and the projects will be started in September. So just to give you a sense of the time frame that we're working on. So we'll go over, I got a couple of questions just to briefly address that have come in the time that we've been doing the webinar, and then we'll wrap things up. So I have one question from Phil in Kingston. Hi, Phil. Is there a limit to the number of applications that I can submit, or is there a limit to the number of applications that one organization can submit? Good questions. The answer is no to both. There's no limit. So you can submit as many applications as you would like, and your organization is not restricted to applying for or even receiving a successful verdict on any number of applications. And the only stipulation around this is obviously you can't apply with the same solution as the basis of your application, but you can apply for different projects to test different solutions or develop different types of innovations. But that's the only rule around that. Apply as many times as you like, as many good ideas as you have. The second question is from Amanda in Calgary. Hi, Amanda. Can we work with other institutions, or does the entire project team have to come from the same organization? We've had that before. It's a good question. You can work with other organizations. We would ask that the primary applicant flip a coin if it's going to be split, but applies as the lead organization. The lead, I guess the project lead would be from one place, and that's where we would flow the funds, but you're more than welcome to work with other organizations, to subcontract other teams from other institutions, and work with them as a collaborative effort on the project, and that often is the case. And so you're more than welcome to tap into other groups with different expertise to work on the project, and that's usually a pretty good idea. And final question we have from Steve in Kelowna, and he's asking, how many applicants do you generally get for the program, and what % are successful? And so we can share that in the past couple of years, there's been a varied amount between anywhere from 80 to 90 to upwards of 100 or so applications that come through, and we do our eligibility screen, and that usually brings it down to a reasonable number, around 70 to 80 of those. And then of those, we have $1 million available for this program. And in the past, it's been different amounts. We had around 30 for the first 2 years doing this. It depends on how much funding people ask for, but we're in a position to fund, in and around that amount, again, around 30 projects. And so I would say that those are, pretty good chances to have an opportunity to do this. And there's not a lot of other opportunities to have the frontline staff kind of engaged in this innovation process. And so we really encourage you, if this is something that you're interested in, you think you have a really effective solution in mind, or something that you'd like to develop a little bit further, to reach out, ask questions to us, and to make sure that you submit it, because there's a good chance that if you're experiencing some of those problems on the front lines dealing with your care population, that other people are as well. And so we want to hear what your thoughts are. And so that's it. That brings us to the end of the webinar. You can visit our website, cabhi.com, to find all that application information. Check out our email. You can send us a note or ask any questions at info@cabhi.com. Follow us on social media at CABHI_ on Twitter, or at CABHI Info on Facebook. We make all of our posts there about new funding opportunities, new project news. You can keep up to date with what's going on in senior care innovation. And so I encourage you all to mix in a follow or a like for our social pages. But that's it. And so we hope to see as many applications from our listeners today, as well as your broader networks. And feel free to share this information. And we'll be posting the webinar online, and so people can join in and learn about it if they weren't able to attend the session today. But with that in mind, a couple of weeks left till application date, and so we hope to see your applications and be working with you very soon. Thanks so much.